Hello, I'm Dr. Angie McCartney.
And I'm Ruth McCartney.
Welcome to TeaFlix,
where each episode's intimate conversation features a fascinating guest across the spectrum of Beatles world, pop culture, Grammy winners, the music industry, chefs, producers, music stars, actors, and more. So bottoms up and join us as they spill the tea on TeaFlix. There we go. It says we are live.
Oh, jolly good. Hello, each. Wow, these weeks certainly zip by. In fact, Tuesday's the only day of the week when I really know what day it is, because my stylist here slapped stuff on my face and I get out of my jammies and into my daytime clothes. And
that reminds me, I have to get to the Home Depot for a new bucket of spackle.
Thank you very much.
Elder abuse.
Yeah, I was one of the few people that complained about wearing masks because I look much better in a mask. So anyway, never mind all this nonsense. Let's get to the point. We have a very exciting guest today, a very old friend from the good old, bad old days.
He's not that old.
Oh, no, he is. I am.
He's
I was
younger
old
than me. I had a birthday March 11th, so happy birthday.
That's right, yes. So, no, I'm 93, so I'm almost older than God.
And a little younger than your teeth, right?
A little bit younger than my teeth. Anyway, back to the plot. Ruth, why don't you bring on our wonderful guest, Denny Tedesco?
Absolutely. And the crowd goes wild.
Hello. Hi, Denny. Hey. Oh, you don't look very much older. Well, a little, but not a lot. How many years is that? How many years is it?
I met Ruth. Ruth and I were working. Ruth, I don't know what the video was. I still remember it was some hard rock video, and Ruth was there in her mink coat helping me wrap cable. I went, I need to know this woman. I'll never forget that.
Mink coat, high heels, and workman's gloves, right?
It was amazing.
Wasn't for Paisley Productions?
No, it was a music.
No, it was 84, 85.
Was it the Breakfast Club, that band Madonna was producing? No.
Oh, I just remember Tony Mitchell, I think, was shooting it. That's all I remember. It's so long, Ruth. The fact that I can remember anything, Ruth.
Ooh. David Lee Roth video?
Nope.
No. When he did
Quiet Riot?
It was even a name band.
Quiet Riot? No.
I don't
know.
But all I remember is that was my introduction to Ruth McCartney, and then she introduced me to you. And
it's all downhill from there.
Absolutely. Do you remember when we all used to go to that, what was it called? The place in Hollywood where they used to set fire to the bar every night.
The Firefly.
Wow.
I lived across the street from the Firefly, and that was, for the folks that don't know the story of the Firefly, it had been there since the 30s or 40s, this bar at Hollywood and Vine. And it was right across the street. I lived in a little loft off the Broadway building, and I would go across the street. It was like being in Cheers, where they go, hey, Denny, and you meet your friends there, and we'd drink and we'd have fun. And they would take lighter fluid and put it into the drink well from one end to the other, and then light it from one side, and we go, whoosh, and everybody goes, and finally, the fire department finally closed the place down a few years later.
I think it burned to the ground eventually, didn't it?
No.
No, it didn't.
There are probably reasons that should have been burned to the ground for other reasons.
Probably, yeah.
It was just so convenient and the crowd that we would get in there was crazy. A bunch of film kids, but because of the proximity to Capitol Records, which is a segue into what we'll talk about. It was Hollywood and Vine that was the place to be in the 80s, huh?
What was I doing there, for God's sake?
You were in the valley.
Scotch and Coke, usually.
Oh, probably.
Scotch and Coke. I don't mean Coke. I mean Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola, yeah.
Versus the Firefly, where they had the other kind.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I believe so.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You bet.
Anyway, first of all, before we get into what you're doing now, which is fascinating, I wanted to talk about the Wrecking Crew because, your father was just a legend in my lunchtime.
Yeah.
All the artists he worked with. And I saw a wonderful picture of him with Elvis. He worked on an Elvis movie, didn't he?
Yeah. He worked with Elvis a lot. Well, he worked with Elvis in the movies all the time. When they would come to LA to do the movies, he was always there.
Yeah.
Is it Charles? The movie Charles, is that right? So you hear him all over the place on one of those songs, because it's all Mexican stuff, Mexican music. And then, but then he did the comeback special, and it was with Hal Blaine and Dad, and the other guitar players were Mike Dacey and Al Casey. Don
Wow.
Randy was the piano player. And that was Steve Binder's project, which is,
Really?
Okay,
Steve
I
Binder was the one that directed that.
Yeah.
Amazing guy.
Yeah, he's lovely. He was the guy that introduced me to Shay J in Santa Monica. The funky
really?
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. Here comes. Watch out. Here they come. I don't know. What is going on? Relax. Everybody relax.
Who let the dogs out?
We'll let the dogs in it?
Yeah.
In it, as we say.
Shut up.
We'll
Wow,
let the
that
dogs
was
in.
rough.
That was okay.
Oh,
It was little ADR dog sounds there.
There we go. That was my neighbor, my sister who lives next door. Took the dog.
Oh, okay, cool. No, when I first met Denny, of course, Tommy Tedesco, his late wonderful father. So he's all looking at this crazy British chick in high heels and a mink coat and, wrapping 4-art cable. And I saw his name on the call sheet and I'm like, Tedesco, are you any relation to Tommy? And he's like, yeah, that's my dad. I'm like, oh my God, he was in the Partridge Family.
That's right.
Oh yeah, because she used to read all the liner notes.
Oh, I was David Cassidy crazy. When I was 12, I was trying to save up enough stamps to mail myself to Columbia Pictures from England.
I remember that.
I had sandwiches. I had a plan. I was going to get water in a box. I was going to mail myself first class to David Cassidy. And then I met you and your father was in the Partridge Family. I nearly fell down.
So when you say in the Partridge Family, what part did he play? He played
guitar.
Guitar, of course.
On all the records.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's
it's funny because that was the first time I got credibility with my friends at the time when I was a kid.
I bet.
No one ever saw, we didn't know what he did, to that point.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
How's that for name dropping?
Yeah. In fact, our friend Charlie Walsh from Florida, he's just saying Denny is an icon. Absolutely. Wow. He is. And
Charlie, I'll send you the check later.
Yeah. And Charlie was among the very, very few people at the end of Louise Harrison's life who took care of her. I think he was among the last people to see her down there. And so we're sort of, Charlie and us are tied through that whole Beatles family. And then, back around, like we were saying, it's such a small crew. And then you think about the Wrecking Crew and all of the things they played on.
Yeah.
The remarkable thing to me when I first watched your film was I didn't realize Glenn Campbell was a part of that, of course.
Yes. Yeah.
And Carol Kay, a woman and a bass player in the 60s. Yeah. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And Leon Russell was part of that too.
That's right.
In the early days, the whole thing about the Wrecking Crew was, the whole name is kind of made up, but that's beside the point. But the early 60s, when these musicians were starting to get all the, recognition from the producers, they needed people to play. A lot of it was non-union gigs at the beginning. It was, hey, we got a demo, and go to Gold Star, and they would take a chance on doing a demo, and then that demo became a, legit hit. So all these guys were doing all this stuff for Spector, Jan and Dean, Mamas and Papas, Fifth Dimension, and then Sinatra, and all that early stuff. Liam was part of it. Dad was part of it. Hal Blaine was really the key drummer. And then Earl Palmer as well was working a lot. And it just took off and took off to where the point where they had to have these guys in the band they didn't trust the road bands, as everybody remembers, because it was different in the days in the studio. You only had 3 hours to knock off.
Yeah, I know. Crazy.
3 or 4 songs. That was it. You didn't have the band going. The road band could take forever, going into knocking off a song.
Yes.
So that's why these guys were in demand. And then sooner or later, the bands got better and more tracks came in. You only had one track when they started. So everybody in that band had to nail it. That's why Carol's an amazing story, because as a bass player, she's not somebody's girlfriend or somebody's, she's not in an instrument that can hide. What I mean? You can maybe hide another saxophone among the saxophones or something, but she was leading with the drummer, laying down that beat. You don't have a good bass player and drummer, you're done. So that's why Glenn Campbell said it was like playing with Michael Jordan in that room. He goes, everybody was Michael Jordan. Because if you slowed anything down, you had to start all over. You didn't just pop in, at bar 32. You just started all over, and we got 3 hours. We got to get out of here because we got another gig coming up.
Yeah.
So,
and often they'd have to pack up, especially drummers, and drive across town, right? Go to another studio.
No, you know what? Hal was so busy at that point. What he had this guy named, I lost his name. Rick. Rick would basically set up the drums. He had multiple sets of drums. So Rick would basically set it up as Gold Star. Then Hal would come in and maybe go to Capitol. He already had another set up there. So in a sense, he was the first cartage for Hal. He was doing cartage for Hal and then started doing it for the other drummers. And it got to the point where the Teamsters were actually coming down on Hal because, it was like they were threatening him. It was like, and they let it go. And Rick would just do that. That was the only way to do it. Drummer could only do that. Yeah, because my father would take his guitar. My father had his guitars in the car. He had his tools, as I say. People assume, my dad's tools of the trade were, let's say a gut string, the classical, electric, a Telecaster, maybe, a jazz guitar, a 12-string, and a mandolin and a banjo with an amp. And, that's what he would go to work with. It just never, the funny thing is, Ruth, you'll appreciate this. All these guitar players are always freaked out about their guitars being in the car. He never took his guitars out of the car. So because he was gone for 12 hours a day. So he's going doing. So he's locked up. So he goes back to work in the morning. He's just going around. So he wasn't worried about, they were always being played. So other than getting stolen, that was another thing, but the heat didn't bother him.
Wow. Charlie from Florida's got a question. He's a follower of Brian Wilson, and they're kind of friends. What are your thoughts, Denny, on Brian's influence with the Wrecking Crew?
I mean, it's interesting because every one of these guys, I wish my father had been around when I started this. Well, he was around when we started the project, but he never saw it done. But when I went to like Glenn and Don Randy and Leon, they all talk about Brian as just being a genius. I mean, he really is a genius. And what I think was lost for my father.
Right.
Was my father would have gone in, done his thing, done, and move on. He didn't really ever listen to the mixes and none of that. I think these other guys really got to hear and listen and pay attention because what Brian was doing in the studio with my dad's there is maybe not so, interesting. But when he put it together, I think that's when the real genius was coming out.
Right. I know when Pet Sounds came out, it freaked John Lennon and Paul out. They were like, oh, boy, we better step up our game. And then, hello, Sergeant Pepper.
Yeah.
Right.
No, like Leon said, Russell said, he would go around to all the guys and say, here's the part. He would sing it to the guy, next one all the way around. And he'd know everything. By the time he got around the whole room, the first guy probably forgot it. But, Brian knew exactly what he was doing. Yeah. Brian was the only guy in the studios, by the way. None of the other guys were there, except for Carl was there doing it. But Carl would do it, I think, away from the guys. His solos wasn't always, it sounded like he would do it on his own later.
Wow. Amazing, because when you're a fan and you pick up the record and you listen to it, you sort of visually imagine, or I did in those days, everybody gathered around a microphone in a studio doing it, all together.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, the singers did. That's the thing, the singers, but that's it. So the guys, my father never really remembered meeting the Beach Boys, other than Brian.
Wow, that's one of my favorite vibes in studio vibes in town is. Studio 3 at East West, the Pet Sounds room. It's tiny, but it's got something about it. And when you walk out along to the, to the parking lot to go out the back, not Sunset, but the sideway to the parking. Yeah. I swear to God, sometimes I can smell. I know that nobody's smoking anymore in the studio, but right by that wooden back door, I can smell cigarettes. Yeah, before you get out, and it's like, was this the Siggy corner where they all used to hang out and smoke? Probably, because
I don't think they didn't have to have a corner, Ruth. In those days, they didn't have any corners. They didn't need to. They smoked right there.
That's right.
My father had a horrible reputation of being a smoker. He didn't do drugs. He didn't drink, but you knew where Tommy was on the last session because there was a pack of cigarettes on the ground, literally like butts. And he never had a cigarette. Not if you look at that film, I don't think there's a picture without a cigarette in his hand.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad, Jim McCartney, was the same. He could easily go through a carton of Peter Stuyvesant's every day because he would light one cigarette from the other, and then he'd have one burning in every room just in case he forgot to take one with him.
Yeah, it's such a sick, it's weird. I mean, you don't think about it because I smoked, so you don't think about it until years later.
Yeah, no, I never did, and I never got into the whole drug thing. I'll have a refreshing adult beverage once in a while, but it's we were actually, when 1972, I would have been 12, and that was really kind of at the height. The Beatles had broken up and Wings were starting, and there were just a lot of people through the house. We'd ding dong, the doorbell would go, and it'd be Rockstar XYZ, Dusty Springfield and Madeline Bell, or you name Rod Stewart. Mike said I could stay in the guest room, and so they would bring various and nefarious characters and types with them back from the pub. And lots and lots of drugs being hidden from me as a child in and out. But this one was so smart. She said to me, well, you're getting grown up now, so make a list of whatever drugs you want to try, and me and your dad will sit at the kitchen table and we'll all do them together. And I went, ew. Not cool.
No problem.
Just never got into it. Kind of smart.
Reverse psychology, it was called.
Yeah, absolutely. So how long did it actually, from start to finish, in case we have any budding filmmakers out here, to get the Wrecking Crew done?
Do you want to scare him? Is that what you want?
Yeah.
All right, so dad was passing away. I heard we got the notice. Dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he only had like 11 months. So that's 95. So 96, I wanted to tell that story about the guys in the band, the Wrecking Crew. So I put together Dad, Hal Blaine, Carol Kay, and Plaz Johnson at a round table and started shooting that in 96. And then I started slowly bringing in a couple other folks. And I got Don Randy and Nancy and then Cher. But Dad died at this point. And then I put together a piece, and he dies in 97. So 98, I get a nice short, piece to shop around, and no one would help me. They said, you'll never get this made because there's too much music in it. You'll never be able to tell the story. And because people assumed it was always going to be the labels and it wasn't. It was economics. It's only going to make this much. It's going to cost us this much.
Right. And
I had to keep going because now it's like, well, if I just listen to them, well, I'm dead. So I just kept going, building. And over those years, I would build. I get Brian Wilson in there after 8 years, and then I get Herb Alpert and Nancy Sinatra already had, and Cher and Gary Lewis, and I just kept building. And then after 10 years, my wife Susie thought we just made the most expensive home movie ever,
right?
And we had nothing to show for it, and I realized, well, if I don't cut something, we're done. And that's when I basically borrowed again. I was doing all this if people say, who helped you? I said, well, Wells Fargo, American Express, Citibank, all those credit cards helped. And then they beat the, so we made the film, and 08 got into these festivals. 09, we got in festivals, and we won a dozen awards, amazing reviews, sellout crowds everywhere. But we still owed, over $500,000 worth of licensing between the music and the photos and everything. So I had to keep going. And then finally, I figured by 2010, how are we going to do this? No one's touching us. Right. But I couldn't stop. I crossed that line of no return. If I don't go, I mean, it's great. I got a bunch of trophies up, on the shelf next to my most inspirational baseball trophy as a little leaguer, nothing MVP, but, and I just kept going, and I thought, well, let's try to find sponsors. And basically what I did was I wanted to get the music community behind it, get Fender or Zildjian, and none of these companies would help with money. That was the thing, is I said, let's take the DVD. We'll have all the outtakes of the guitar players You hit the button, you see a Fender commercial.
Yep.
No. Okay, fine. So then I started getting people done basically, hey, I'll dedicate a song. And I said, what do you mean? He says, I'll give you $1,000. This one guy said, to dedicate Up and Away. He said, that got me into radio. He said, when I was a kid, I had the transistor radio. I had Up and Away on 2 different stations. One was one low. This AM was lower than this AM. He goes, that's where he got into technology, this guy. He says, make it like a dedication, like a brick in the wall at a hospital or something. I said, okay. And that took me on this road of figuring out ways of, you give me $1,000 Up and Away, you write your beautiful notice or your beautiful dedication out on the website and on the DVD. But on the end of the film, Up and Away is dedicated by Greg. And same thing with all the songs.
Smart
so
idea.
If you look back on it, we'll see people's names dedicated by. That's what
I wonder
meant.
where that came from.
Yeah.
And so that started me then going to around the country. I was like barnstorming. I would go to small towns. I would play in schools. I play in studios. I play in theaters. I play anywhere I had a kind of help there where someone would be involved. I do it for charities. I get some, they get some. I take the money and I basically pay off a label, pay off a publisher. And I kept going.
Grassroots screenings, in other words, all over.
It's really crazy. I mean, I would put up on the screen before our movie started, pictures of the crew, some of the soundtrack are playing in the background, and hey, thank you to our sponsor, Mary's Grooming, blah blah blah, dog grooming. They give them 6 tickets for a couple $100 or whatever.
Wow.
And that's why I never paid for a hotel room for 3 years because I always gave tickets away to the show. And they were, people were into it. If it wasn't for real people, that film would never have been made because I couldn't have done it. I ran out of money, obviously, once I stopped.
Wow.
And that started me. I mean, the greatest at that point in 2013, 14, 15, the film had been done. I know the film was fine. I never questioned the film because real audience had seen it. It was just a matter of paying off the debt.
Right.
And then I was in the best marketing sale I ever had was Everybody Loves a Clown, the Gary Lewis song.
Yeah.
I thought, who's going to dedicate that to their loved one? That's not going to go over well. So I thought, I'm going to find a clown school. And I called the LA Clown School and I pitched him and he goes, yeah, I'm in. I was like, that was more exciting than making the film. The fact that I could pitch that and got $1,000 off these guys.
That's funny. Elizabeth's asking, Mr. Tedesco, how does an unaward-winning filmmaker find corporate sponsors?
I wasn't, Elizabeth, I wasn't a award winner, don't forget. At that point, I'm still like working it. You just have to make those calls. The hardest thing is making those calls and see if you can get through past the gatekeeper. He said if the door was closed, find another way and go through a window.
That's right.
I learned one thing. I was doing a project on this. It was nothing to do. I was just producing it. It was a sales thing. Guy that sells houses or whatever. He goes, you got to make 20 calls of 20 no's before you get a yes. Yeah. And that was an interesting concept. I sound like I can preach it. Do I do it? No, because I get disappointed just like everybody else. But it's true. You need to just keep banging away. And sooner or later, you're going to get someone that's going to talk to you. Right. I think the hardest thing for all of us, and trying to overcome it, is the damn emails. And I think you need to actually get on a phone sometimes.
Yeah.
And when I start figuring out, wait a minute, I'm the same guy that's hanging up on the person that calls my house. So I think that's why I panicked.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Rejection's
and so now,
easier by email, don't you think?
And silence is golden. I mean, we get a lot of crazy requests, as you can imagine, because we own the domain name and all the emails that go to McCartney.com. So you can only imagine the stuff we get asked for. Mm-hmm. And in the very beginning, one of our kids here, one of our crew, Lucy or Caitlin or somebody would answer. My credo as a CEO was answer every single email. Everyone deserves an answer. But A, the volume, and B, the craziness of some of these things, I just sometimes I hate to do it, and it really rankles me. But I just delete. Just because if you engage with somebody that's clearly kind of off the reservation.
That's right. So that's a really interesting thing. All right. So let's go back though. On the other side, Susie, my wife, would say, "Do you have to answer everybody's email?" I said, yes, because now obviously it's different if there's way too much and it's obviously a sales thing, whatever. You just don't know who's on the other end. And that had worked out many a times where I engaged in someone just asking. I will always engage with someone's asking me a question about Wrecking Crew or whatever. If it doesn't look like the sales call, I'm all over it. I, give them say, yeah, look, check it out, but my dad, I learned that from my dad also. And you'll talk to any guitar player that came into town in the 70s and 80s, and they'll say, "Oh my God, I called so-and-so and no one returned my call. I called this person. Your dad was the only one that called back." And my dad, I think there was two reasons. One, he didn't know who this person was. He didn't know if it was a gig. He didn't know what. And he would talk to the kid and say, "Listen, you're doing time. Well, come do a session with me." And many of these amazing guitar players would see sessions with my father by just calling. And he would say, "Meet me at the Universal Gate, be there on time." If he wasn't on time, forget it. He's already in. And he would have the kid just sit next to him and watch what was going down. Many of the great guitar players of today had that chance.
Wow.
And that was really amazing. Because that's what I learned. I have to.
So generous.
I think people need to be engaging. You have to engage in people.
Yeah.
You have to talk to people.
Right. Which is why we love our crowd here on TeaFlix Tuesdays. Every Tuesday, we find, old friends, interesting people, whatever, and we have a conversation, which is why I use this software, is because I can pop people onto the screen and we're all kind of sitting in this virtual room. These podcasts that are just the host and me, enough about me. What do you think about me? I'm not really interested in that kind of thing, but no, we do get crazy stuff like, can I go in your limo to the Grammys? And then when Paul announces a tour,
can we have 6 tickets?
I need 6 tickets, backstage passes, and one of us is in a wheelchair. So where's the ADA ramp entrance to such and such a stadium?
And just say, okay,
right on it.
Like I've got
there's 6 tickets in your name. What's your name? Okay, there's 6 tickets there. Just go to the
No, but you see, that's why I agree with you. I'd love to engage with everybody, but some people just
I don't have that. I don't have that problem.
They want the moon.
Yeah, you get a couple knuckleheads, but you get a lot more knuckleheads than I'll ever get.
Yeah, and they mean well, and they're fans, and they're sweet, and I'm sure they love people, but I can't help them, so I just don't want to disappoint them. So silence is golden in some ways.
Sometimes. Yeah.
So how and when did you, and obviously Susie would have had to be a part of this big decision, when did you think, okay, I achieved that? It was 10, 15 years of my life, but I honored my dad and his friends with the Wrecking Crew. When did you decide, or were you approached because of the Wrecking Crew to work on this amazing, thank you, screener, the immediate
that's an interesting transition. So once we basically raised all that money, I was looking for a distributor. Magnolia, I went to Magnolia.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually went to a couple places. One person who said, "Listen, you should go to a bigger vendor." He goes, "I think," and he was very honest with me. He goes, "Listen, I don't think the majors even know you're done. They think you came and went in 2008, because they don't know what I'm doing." So I went to Magnolia and told them what I finished paying everything off. They said, "Great," and they put it out. We were shell shocked at that point. Be honest, we went bankrupt at that point. We lost, we kept our house, but we went bankrupt. And because I was flipping cards, I always had, the funny thing is I had good credit because I was paying off the minimums, but that kept adding up. And I was looking to, for the big win, throw that dice and it's going to pay everybody off. Even when I got the film release, it's not enough to pay everybody off. Wow. And so that was like, and it was the accountant said, "You can't do this. You got to, and it was a weird feeling but it was only the credit cards. So I didn't knock anybody, no one lost on my end.
No.
Right.
Vendors. So I felt good. Okay about that. But it is a feeling of horrible feeling of going back. but it's part of life.
But
and
you did
so
you did it for your dad, so the hell with it.
Did it for I had to go for my family. You know,
Right.
I had to make sure I saved them. And so
no, I mean,
the next few years,
the project, you did it with passion and love. And if the banks don't understand the money part, well,
they don't care.
That's their loss.
I gave the banks options of bringing that interest rate down. No one, if they'd asked, when you ask a bank, can you bring it down from 12 to 8 or whatever? And they didn't do it. And I'm sorry. But I ended up doing is shell shocked. I kept doing, working on other projects, producing, TV stuff, like promos and things like that. And then 2019 came around, and these guys, Greg Richling and Jonathan Sheldon and Jack Pye, came to me, these producers, and they said, would you be interested in doing this project? It was about the guys in the section. I went, oh, now that's like right up my alley. The guys in the section were Danny Kochmar and Leland and Russ Kuckel, Leland Sklar. And they have a band now currently called Immediate Family, which is with Waddy Wachtel. I went, wow, this makes sense.
Yeah.
Because in the end of the Wrecking Crew, I asked Lou Adler, hey, I said, well, did you make a conscious decision to stop using those guys in the Wrecking Crew when you did Tapestry? And he said, he goes, no. He says, Carol brought in her own people. Right. She brought in James Taylor and Danny Kochmar. So it seemed like a natural transition from the old to the new. And when I said in the beginning of the Wrecking Crew, I said, this is the story about my father and his extended family, the Wrecking Crew. Now, the fact that these guys have a band called Immediate Family, that's what it is. All you musicians, when you're together for years, you are a family. And, some families break up, some don't. But these guys never were together. They were just in and out for years. But when he needed to put a band together, Danny thought, I'll put my brothers together. Right. To do this album. And that's how it started. So that seemed like the natural, jump off.
Well, you would be the perfect director for it, having lived through not just the filming and the wrangling of the celebrities, but the storytelling of the Wrecking Crew. It's basically these guys are Wrecking Crew 2.0, aren't they?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And it's interesting. Steve Pastel had a good, who's in the band with them, said something at a screening recently. He said, Denny's the perfect person for this. He said, because he's not a musician, which is, which is interesting because I'm not. I can't,
Right.
Everybody assumes I can play, but I can't.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but Steve Postel.
I understand the psychology of these guys. I understand. I was very fortunate to be around one of the great players of our time, and legendary in his studios and this and that. But I also saw other players come and go. I saw my father's career, come to an end in the 80s or 90s, actually. And I saw him, how he dealt with it. He was fine with it, but I know there's always something underneath. God, I'm not getting
right. But even though you're not a musician, being Tommy Tedesco's son, it's in your DNA. You can't help but understand music. It's in your blood. I mean, it's just, the son of a chef is probably going to be a great cook, right? So you understand that you get the vibe, and you've seen all the ups and downs and the dramas. So you know what these guys have been through, not just as studio musicians, but also, I didn't realize, but road bands. And so you go from the crazy of the road and the 3 a.m. bus and sharing a bathroom to all of a sudden you got to bang out X amount of tunes. The way Leland Sklar goes and literally just learns everything and puts it in that computer that is hidden behind that beard in his head is and Kunkel too. But, I think that you're right when you were talking about Carol Kay earlier. The foundation of any good band has to be the rhythm section. I mean, we just did a gig recently with a great artist that we work with called Nick Marischal. And he always jokes I'd be an all-star band if he wasn't in it. He's got He's got John Ferraro on drums.
Yeah.
And he's got Travis Carlton, who's Larry Carlton's kid, on bass.
Yeah, bass.
And they just lock. And his previous bass player was Andrew Ford, who's been out on the road with Chaka Khan for years. But, you know, finding that magic combination of the bass player and the drummer, people often ask us about, you know, what was the magic of the Beatles? And to a certain extent, it's just a posit. But Ringo and Paul are both left-handed.
I didn't know Ringo was.
Oh yeah, but he had to play when they got, you know, a £5 gig somewhere. He didn't have a drum kit till Brian Epstein bought him one. He would show up to a right-handed kit, so he had to learn to play right-handed kits. But if you give Ringo his druthers, he's left-handed, and so is Paul. And so maybe that was the lock between them. And that's again the tragedy when somebody like Charlie Watts passes away. There are a million great drummers out there, but they're not Charlie Watts. They don't fit in that recipe. Right?
Yeah. I mean, so, well, these guys, I mean, with the other difference between these guys and my dad, when they came in, you know, let me go back to when I met with these guys. Yeah. They said, well, I pitched them the idea, you know, and I only knew Leland personally, you know, because Leland was one of those guys that always showed up at all the Wrecking Crew things, which was like, dude, you're amazing. You know, he was always there supporting.
He's a class act.
Totally. And so when I met the other guys, the first time meeting them, and pitched them the idea, and they said, great. And then the next day we got that call from Carole King's office, said, yeah, Carole can do it in 3 weeks. I went, uh-oh. Now I was not ready. It was like Carole King said yes to an interview. And I'm like going, oh shit, I don't know if I have that. So, you know, I pitched the idea, but now I gotta get it. It's real. I don't have 19 years this time to make a film. I have to make this, I'd speed up the progress. So I quickly jumped into it. And within 2 months, we had Carole King, James Taylor, Jackson Browne, Linda Ronstadt, Lou Adler,
Peter Asher?
A few more. I mean, just Phil Collins. It just kept going.
Yeah.
And that says so much about these guys, because these people would do anything to jump and help tell their story.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
I had forgotten what an integral part of all of that our old friend Peter Asher was, but you know, he came out. So I don't know if you've done the math on this, but Peter Asher's sister Jane was engaged to Paul McCartney, which is how he got involved in Apple and then signed James Taylor, and then the rest is history. So again, it's sort of it's all of that family.
You take Peter out, music changes.
Yeah.
You don't have James. You don't have Carole and James. You might not have, you know,
Linda.
Carole might have gone with, you know what I mean? Because Carol's playing with James at that point.
Right.
And then he's doing Linda Ronstadt as well. And who knows?
Carole was very sort of brill building, like you say in the film. She was very establishment. We worked with her daughter, Sherry Goffin Condor, who has an amazing music education for children.
Oh, that's
program.
Right. In the early days. Yeah.
Sugar Beats like beats. And so, you know, obviously preparing to work with Sherry, doing more research into her mom, into Carole, she was really just an established, you know, getting to be an established songwriter. And I don't think she ever really thought she was going to be an artist. But again,
they forced her into, you know, the guys, I think it was James or Danny, or they all said, go do a couple songs. You know, and she would warm up at, you know, and she would sing a song, but she was very shy. She didn't want to be that headliner.
Oh, I love her. I think she's wonderful.
Oh, Tapestry is like, you know, one of the Desert Island discs. They used to have remember the radio show?
Yeah, BBC.
Yeah. That's right. If you're trapped on a desert island, what do you take with you? Well, Tapestry would be on my list for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, you take Peter Asher out of that equation, and I loved the way in your film, in The Immediate Family, you sort of he's sort of a pinning point, right?
That's right.
You know, you keep coming back to the
thread.
thing that is Peter. Yeah. And at the beginning, what really moved me was the tree. It's like a family tree. Yeah. And all the leaves have all the artists' names on, and then a song is featured, and a little flower comes up on that leaf while you're listening to the song. And you forget how connected we all are, really, through music.
That the flower thing is, I stole that from, well, the family tree made sense. It was like, okay, I totally came in, it was like, oh, this is great. This is a great idea, da, da, da. But then the flower thing was, I used to produce the Time Life CD collections a few years ago. And you remember when you watch one of those silly commercials and it's going on and the song's like, what is that song? What is that song? Who's that group? And then all of a sudden it says, oh, in highlight, Fifth Dimension, and
Yes.
that was my flowers, that was it.
Charlie's asking, was there ever any thought or attempt to get the other famous studio band from Motown, the Funk Brothers? Was there ever any crossover with the they ever play together?
In those days, there was each city had its own thing going on. It was not organized. If anything, the Funk Brothers were maybe a little more organized because they seemed to play at one studio more than anything. But the Wrecking Crew, don't forget, is maybe 18, 15 guys, 10 guys, whatever it is. They're working with different producers all the time. It's not one label. So they're working with Lou Adler. They're working with Herb. They're working with Dave Axelrod. They're working with Jan, or Phil. So it was never that thing. The closest it came is when Jameson moved to LA. And that's when they started working with him, or Bob Babbitt did some stuff later. But those guys, even in the 60s, they never ever left town. Hal did, and Joe Osborne did when they did, I think, the sessions with Paul Simon Garfunkel, but very seldom did they ever leave town.
Wow. Yeah, no, it would have been a very interesting concert to have had, the Funk Brothers and the Wrecking Crew all on one stage at the time. But unlike the Immediate Family, who are now out on tour, we just saw them in Santa Clarita with Nick Marshall opening. And what was so nice? I haven't seen Russell Kunkel in, oh my gosh, since Record One Valgare days in the 1980s when Nico Bolas, who's also in your film, was engineering and mixing Building the Perfect Beast, Don Henley, which is when I met Cooch back in those days. So the whole thing is sort of all tied together so beautifully. But I didn't realize until watching the Immediate Family film last night that Danny Korchmar had written All She Wants to Do Is Dance.
Yeah.
Never knew that.
That's the other thing, that these guys are very different than the Wrecking Crew guys. The differences are, these guys would go on the road. These guys were writers. Danny and Waddy wrote a lot of songs. Yeah. They also, the difference is also they spent time with these artists. When they're spending time with Linda and Carol and James, they're all the same age in a sense. It's not like when my father in 1960, he's 30 years old. He's an old guy, and he's working with the Beach Boys, who are teenagers.
Right.
So there's not that brother. They're not of the same. Hey, let's hang out. And Dad never. So they bond. So when Waddy's on the road with Linda, he's singing songs with her in the off hours. Or the Everly Brothers. He said he would sing. He and they would sing, basically be in their hotel room, and the Everly Brothers would slowly, one would come in and the second one go, "What are you guys doing?" And they sing all night. Wow. The love of music.
Yeah, and obviously the Wrecking Crew, there were a lot more of them, and they were not so much a road band, but the Immediate Family, I was so happy when they actually turned into a band, got themselves out of the studio and off the road with other people, and have built with Bruce Quarto and Quarto Valley Records.
Yeah.
Which is also the home of our client Edgar Winter. And Sammy's watching from Atlanta. Hello, my darling. She runs Edgar's Social World. I was so glad to see them. I'm like, I have to get tickets. I have to go see these guys. And then our act Nick got the opening slot, so we got to go and hang out. And what was so nice was, because these canyon clubs are great, but the one at Santa Clarita, the stage is very, very small. And so getting 2 drum kits on there for the opener, John Ferraro's drums for Nick Marshall, and then Russell Kunkel's drums for the Immediate Family. So Ferraro said, I don't know how, because if they go in and they do their sound check at like 2:00, and then the opener gets a line check at like 5:30, 6 before the doors open. So I texted Nico Bolas, who gave me Russell Kunkel's number, and I texted Russell and said, would you be so kind as to let John Ferraro play your kit? And he's like, sure, no problem. Not sure if my stool's the right height. Maybe he wants, bring his sticks and his own stool, but Absolutely. They hadn't seen each other for years, but it's that sort of honor among thieves, among drummers. And he was just the sweetest. And same with Herman Matthews at another gig. He's another huge drummer. But Ferraro was on the road with Burt Bacharach for 25 years. So, everybody knows him, and he's not good. But, it's just so generous of Russell.
Yeah.
Here's his, sponsored DW drum kit. And he's like, sure, if Ferraro doesn't mind sitting in front of my sponsorship, skin, have at it. It was so sweet. So it just saves a hassle for the roadies too,
I gotta say, the musicians, and I've always said this, musicians are an interesting group of people because they have to work with each other. They have to listen to each other. They're an artistic form, like actors, that have to work with other artists. It's not like you're a solo painter or, and there was the greatest thing, like when they're making the Wrecking Crew was and you remember we were struggling over those years. And then I would see someone with they would see my shirt and say, "Oh, I love that film." And we still haven't been out. I go, "Where'd you see it?" "Oh, saw it on the Perry Como bus." "Okay." Where'd you see it?" "Saw it on the Elton John flight or the Gliss flight." And it's like, it got around. It was like bootlegged, which it used to piss me off. But then I realized musicians are the best because all they want to do is talk about good shit. I got the latest bass. I got the latest guitar player. "Oh my God, you should hear that guitar player. Oh my God, you should hear that drummer."
Yeah.
Yes, there are always jealousies, whatever. Everybody's jealous. But they also love to brag about who that other person they saw.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Or who they got to play with. And that, I have to say, much more giving as musicians than actors in a lot of ways. Yeah. I'm not dissing on actors. I just think there's something that,
well, an actor can also really be, they hop from role to role and they have to work in an ensemble on every production, but they are their own brand, and then like,
you're right. That's it. You're right. That's exactly true.
Whatever. And so a band is a brotherhood or a sisterhood, until one of them goes solo. But I think, actors sort of stand alone as I'm the box office get, I'm the Tom Cruise, I'm going to sell the tickets, whatever. They work great on set and they're wonderful people, but at the end of the day, they still have to represent their brand and moving forward and making more money in the next thing, right?
Yeah.
So
and these guys at this point in their time, when you got Danny, Waddy, and Leland and Russ, and they're way past that feeling of jealousies. They're way past. I mean, and I can't say that there's some of the nicest guys around. Absolutely. Collaboration versus competition. Dina, that's an interesting listen. Absolutely. There's always that competition because you're doing your best you can.
Right.
I mean,
well, and Dina knows, she was on our show a few weeks ago. She's just been inducted into the Sports Broadcasting Hall of Fame. She is a rare woman in NFL camera history. She's been outside at Lambeau Field in the snow shooting NFL games for years. Yeah. And, again, it's not about a competition of who gets the best camera angle or the best shot. They just want to come together as a crew and give the best broadcast to the fans at home, right? So of all people, Dina would understand that. So where can people, when can people expect to see the Wrecking Crew? What is your current distribution?
You mean the immediate family? Well, the
immediate family. Sorry, I know this.
Let's see. Wrecking Crew you can actually see on Hulu, I think, right now, and in YouTube and other places. Immediate family. We're at that stage of we came out in Woodstock was our opening festival, I think, in October, and we've done like 8-9 festivals now. We've got 4 awards, 3 audience awards, and in Boulder we just won the favorite music film. Best music film, whatever. Now we're trying to we really need people to sign up on the website so they could see the trailer and the outtakes. What it does is gives me analytics. I need to start showing. I want to show these people, hey, these distributors out there. We're not just a small, listen, I had the same problem with Wrecking Crew, and I'm not. It's not like the first time here.
Right.
But Wrecking Crew's 7 years old in the sense that there's new people. Wrecking Crew has never stopped, by the way. still going. People still talk to me. They still, every day I get an email from someone just seeing it for the first time.
Right.
Yeah.
So with immediate family, I need to make noise.
Okay.
So anybody, I don't care where you are, please just sign up on the Instagram and share those posts with other people. Tell people these films, and I always tell, if you see an indie film like this,
Support it.
tell people about it. My other thing is, if you don't like it, don't tell anybody. But
I mean,
we're not out yet. Technically, we're not out yet, and we can't be. Obviously, we're not shown it to the public unless you're in a festival. But we're also looking for sponsors. We're looking for we have a few sponsors that came on. The Sessions, which is a beautiful organization with Jules Follett, they became a main sponsor for us. So their logo's on our credits. We're dedicating songs again. And it's not because we need the money for the license. We're paid. But what we want to do is continue this and take this to different cities and try to make the most of it and have a charity event where we can help the charity as well as help the film get out there.
Right.
I'm not going to ever stop.
No,
this film will go on forever, and I will until I get it out there. I'm not going to stop trying to get it out there. It'll be out probably the next few months, but we really need people to start talking about it more.
So the website is immediatefamilyfilm.com.
Yeah,
please go there, grab it, share it, send all your love. We're obviously going to post this on our YouTube channel, and Denny, I'll send you the link to this interview so that you can share it with your world as well. And go on Facebook and Instagram at Immediate Family Film. Go give them a follow and, share, get the little repost app and share away. And so what's
I'm
next?
Learning.
What's next?
Doing two projects. One I have going which is really fun, is we just started it, is Wolfman Jack. Wolfman Jack documentary.
Wow.
And that is one of my favorites. And I hear a bunch of dogs in the background. What's going on? Let's see. Hold on. Oh, yeah.
Oh, cute.
So let me just show you that. The dog in the background is my neighbor's dog, who I guess I'm taking care of right now. Just came in. Hello. By the name. Oh, wait, hold on. Come here. Let me introduce you. That's Ringo.
Sweet pie.
So
Ringo. Is he left-handed?
Yes. The reason Ringo is, and this is Rosie. Ringo lives next door. Ringo is Chris Jago, who's a fabulous drummer from Liverpool. And they got the dog. The dog's name was Ringo. They said, that's the dog.
That's the one.
Chris Jago got Ringo.
That's
so
funny.
I'm taking
so
care
Wolfman
of
Jack is up next.
Yeah, Wolfman Jack is doing that, and we had the blessing of the family, and we go talk to Todd, the son, and we started that. And I have this other thing called Hanging with Dr. Z. I don't know if anybody knows that. There you go. Hanging with Dr. Z is Dana Gould, who's a comedian. He wrote on The Simpsons and producer and fabulous comedian. Was great. And he, I was just looking at all these notes coming across. I love to, Dina.
I'll hook you up.
So basically, Dana Gould plays Dr. Zayas of the Planet of the Apes, and it's like Fernwood Tonight meets Dick Cavett. And we bring in these comedians, and we did this during COVID because we couldn't do anything. So we had COVID. We had the comedians on the other side of the stage in another room, and we would connect Dana and and they would just riff, improv all the way through. So it's hangingwithdrz.com. It is the funniest group of people. There's no money involved. I don't make any money, which I'm okay with because I love this job. We're just doing it for fun. And it's been fun.
It's absolutely great. Well, thank you so much for spending the time with us today, because I know how busy you are, and it's great to hook up after however many years it is, probably 15 or 20 years since we saw you over in the marina at the charity do. And, you and I'll talk offline. Angie will hook you up with Dina Sheldon and Jeff Zachary, her partner, who is also a brilliant camera person. And they've invented all kinds of robo cams and boat cams and things that you might even be interested in using. Yeah.
All right. So I'm coming out to see you guys next week. Whatever I'm doing, I'm taking you ladies out.
Okay. Right? Let's go.
Ladies, how very dare you?
Who you calling a lady? I am no lady.
How very dare you.
Very dare you.
I resemble that remark.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
So,
now,
as our special guests, as our viewers will know, for our very special guests, we always finish with a limerick in your honor. So,
Here it is.
Standing by. A 1, 2,
2,
3.
3.
This guy's such a talented lad. No doubt he takes after his dad. His skills are so many, no flies on our Denny. His movies are really not bad.
Ta-da!
Wow.
See you on the
I
other
love
side.
that. That is
Thanks so much
modern.
for joining us today. And
And you know what's great? You didn't use artificial intelligence.
No, we didn't.
No.
No, we did
Nope,
not
you
use
did
ChatGPT
it.
to write that.
No.
Although I am actually training ChatGPT to write limericks.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
Believe it or
that's
not.
another story. That's my next book. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And just writing a limerick book, so you never know. Well, thanks so much, kids. Everybody
Thanks,
needs to go to immediatefamilyfilm.com, sign up, make a noise, spread the love, tell the world, and we'll see you all of a sudden next Tuesday.
Okay. Thanks, Denny. God
Bye,
bless.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to TeaFlix, and check out Dr. Angie's books, Organic Teas and CBD, at mrsmccartneysteas.com. Toodle pip!